It's been a while since I spoke to you, and I thought it would be a great time to catch up and have a chat about our upcoming clinic in South Australia, which I'm super excited about. So I think it's about 8 weeks away now, which is soon.
Blink,
Um,
blink, and I'll be there.
I know, right? I was thinking back to when I first reached out to you, and I think it's probably going on, is it 3 years now? Like that very
Close.
initial, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So it all is feeling very surreal at this point. But yeah, it's crept up on us super quickly.
hmm
Um, so I guess for those listening who aren't familiar with Lockie Phillips or don't know the work that you do through emotional horsemanship. Can you give some information on who you are, what you do, and what you provide to the equestrian community?
Thank you. Well, I'm coming to Australia for clinics this spring, 2025. And I'm coming to Australia at all because you were the first to get in touch. And not only did you get in touch, but you got in touch again and again and kept asking. And then because you were motivated and because I thought we were in alignment with each other, I kept making attempts to
Mhm.
have something work out. And so, because of your invitation, I'm now presenting clinics in Western Australia and Victoria and in New South Wales as well. And because I'm in the region, I'll be in New Zealand as well. So, it's all your fault, Elise. It's all your fault. But
I'm glad.
my name's Lockie or Lachlan. But outside of Australia, almost nobody can say Lachlan unless you live in certain regions of Scotland. So, because it's not phonetic, it's not logical to the European tongue. So, Lockie was always my nickname with my friends and family growing up. And it's just been a much easier way for me to introduce myself to the world. So, it's actually the name I prefer because that's what my
Mhm.
closest friends and family have called me growing up. I was born in Melbourne. I was around horses as a kid. And then there was a period of my life where horses weren't present as I went off and did something else with my life. I became the first Australian to work in the largest opera house in Europe, in Poland. And I worked for the Polish National Ballet until my late 20s. And in my late 20s, I retired by choice. Um, but in my early 20s, horses came back in. As soon as I landed in Poland, I had time and I had space and I was living a very monastic lifestyle. So horses came back into my life. And very quickly, horses took over my life. And then at one point, I realized I had more to offer and more work to do with horses than I had to do with dance now. And horses were my first passion as a child. So it was my joy to transition directly into horses after working several years dance and horses simultaneously, which was a very, very unique and interesting and for me hugely valuable way to step into this career. So, after living in Poland for a year, I've relocated to Spain, where I now live, and I've lived in Spain for 5.5 years, and did various things in Spain, including lots and lots of trekking for the public, preparing young horses, surviving COVID, hoof care, all sorts of stuff. But during COVID, I presented an online course because that's what we were all doing during COVID.
Mhm.
And on that online course, I presented just one of the training tools that I had been using since my early 20s and been developing. I presented just one of those tools that I was using everywhere I went in these small backwaters and local places. And that course got a couple of students, then it got a couple more, and then it got a couple more, and then it got a couple more, and it just started to grow. And then that brought attention to my social media, and then it just started to gallop away from me. And that online course is my foundation online course, and it's still up today in its original form. I am going to upgrade it eventually. But it was filmed very humbly. I hung a cracked iPhone 6 from an olive tree with a piece of baling twine. And that's how I filmed that course. And I edited it inside of a shipping container where I was keeping my saddles and on the edge of like a dusty paddock that I was borrowing to keep horses because I had no money. It was a very, very humble situation and very difficult sometimes. So everything's sort of grown from there. And then flash forward a couple of years, I find myself having someone like yourself contact me in California and said, I follow you. I've studied you. I want you for a clinic. And I went, they said, do you do that? I said, I don't know. Do I do that? I guess, well, let's try. So I said, okay, I'm apparently coming to California. And I made an email to my email list at the time. I said, does anyone else want to have a look what I'm doing? Then I had 6 clinics booked on my first clinic tour. And then I did a second clinic tour and a third clinic tour and a fourth clinic tour. And this clinic tour that I'm doing with you will be my 5th, and it's a world tour. So there's been a growth. Um, People might think I'm wet behind the ears at 35 years old, but I've lived many lives and I've wasted no time. And I feel like I'm 105 most of the time. And at this stage, it's not a flash in the pan anymore. It's not a sprint. I'm on a marathon right now to keep this sustainable for me because I've got more work than I can handle. And I'm not for everyone, but I do have the chops to back up everything I talk about. So yeah, that's kind of the story. What do I do? Is that maybe I can speak about that in a bit more
Yeah.
detail?
Yes, please.
I train horses, but there are too many horses and not enough me's to go around. So instead of trying to train directly horses for the public anymore, which frankly I would love to do because most horse people love horses more than they love horse people. But instead of trying to do that, I've shifted into educating people to train horses. And I offer my lens on horse training for them to discover and interpret in their own way. I'm not trying to produce clones and I don't want everyone to be like me, but I am offering my lens for them to discover so they can develop themselves in their own way through that lens. I train horses gently, which means patience. It means there's a certain amount and a certain style of pressure that we forbid ourselves to use, like vegetarians daily say no to steak. So I'm a conscientious objector to certain types of pressure and certain apparatus which can leverage pressure upon horses. And I can define in explicit detail exactly why we've made those choices. And I say we because I don't work on my own anymore. I have a team of instructors that work with me and employees who work with me now. And I'm low key between you and me, Elise. I'm developing more instructors as time goes on. But so we don't use excessive pressure. We use gentle pressure, patience, and technique to get the same results that you might be getting with pressure that escalates or sort of fusses the horse or hurries the horse or hustles the horse to respond now. We use patience and technique and timing and gentle touch and trust to get the same results over time. I'm very food reward friendly, but I don't use a clicker for the same reasons I don't use escalating pressure, which is a controversial statement, but it's a level of reinforcement that we try to stay away from, and I can define exactly why. I can offer people tuition in everything from touch aversion and rehabilitating that to developing an emotional bond, to developing their seat, to the biomechanics of their horse's movement, to developing their horse for trail work, to high school movements. I've got a broad skill set, hoof care, but our lens into all of these skill sets is from the horse's emotional state. Because if you can understand the horse's emotional state, all other aspects of that horse will be made plain to you, their physical state, their mental state, and dot, 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 maybe their spiritual state too. Does that help a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. That's perfect. And I think everything you've said is really what did drive me to reach out to you. I just want to say that it's so refreshing to speak to someone who views horses and the way we work with them in the way that you do. Um, and I just really admire your just relentless drive to better the way that we work with them.
Well, I'll put that back on you. Ditto to you, because I can't do clinics without good hosts that are motivated first. And
Mhm,
so if I'm resonating with you, it means you're doing the same or similar. And so I
mhm,
will stand with you till the cows come home or the horses come home. Relentless drive, I do have, but I do have the ability to press pause. I've just come back from a long break.
mhm,
Um, I've there are a couple of compliments that I get frequently, and I have a very complicated relationship to compliments, but refreshing's one of them. The other one I get is honest,
mhm,
and the other one I get is brave. I've been called brave so many times that it starts to feel like a diss.
mhm,
And I'll be frank with you, sometimes my bravery gets me in trouble with other
mhm,
people because I'm not afraid to call things out
mhm,
and not afraid to speak plainly to things. But what I can say is that in a clinic environment, my discernment and my focus and my critical thinking is never weaponized against people. And it's never weaponized against the horse.
mhm,
If I weaponize my discernment and my critical thinking, it is for the horse, not against anyone. If someone is standing in front of me at a clinic as an auditor, someone who's watching, or as a participant, someone who's participating, I assume that they have good intentions. I assume that they are trying their best. And I assume that they are there because they want to hear some truth and they want to work on some stuff. And so in a clinic environment, that's how I roll.
mhm.
That's how I roll.
Awesome. And I think that can sometimes be a really difficult thing to do. And I find the same thing as well. Sometimes when you do start to speak out about things um, that you feel really passionate about or that you feel could use some tweaking or a bit of change, um, a lot of times it comes across in a way that people get quite defensive or offended by. Not always, but sometimes that can happen. So yeah, I think you have a really great way of articulating what you mean and putting it in a way that people can understand and not, take too much offense to, which is awesome.
I
I'm still
try,
working on that.
I try, but I have to be frank with you, Elise. I'm not in a fawn response either.
Mm.
I'm a recovering people pleaser. I'm
Hmm.
in a 12-step program for it. And I'm learning how to stand in my truth, even if that doesn't
Hmm.
please anyone. Because it's like, come
Hmm.
on, like try and change long held traditional practices without offending people, said nobody ever,
Yeah.
right? You know, traditional long held practices that people really value often don't respond well to change um, initially. Yes. And change is hard for all of us, especially for me, And so I want people to know that if they're undergoing change, I've undergone it also, and I'm probably
Mhm.
undergoing some change right now. So I do that
Mhm.
in front of you openly and plainly. And I'm critical of myself first before anybody else is critical of me. So anyone who tries to weaponize criticism of me, it's a water off the duck's back because I'm already aware of my foibles. And I think all of that is drama that's distracting us from the horse. And
Mhm.
I am undistracted from the horse.
Mhm.
Undistracted from the horse.
Mhm. No, I totally agree with that. So Thank you. That answers that question really well, gives people a good feel about what you're all about. For those who are attending or thinking about attending our cuddler clinic, can you talk to us a bit about the format and what they can expect? And maybe go into a little bit of how an emotional horsemanship clinic may differ from your traditional horsemanship clinic that a lot of people may be familiar or used to, particularly in our area.
Thank you. So, firstly, it's cuddler, not coodler.
Cuddler.
Cuddler. So, like cuddles.
Yeah, it is with a K, but yeah.
I'm gonna. I'm a cuddler.
Yeah,
Love
I
that.
like that. I'm going to use
Thank
that.
you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. So, depending where you are in the world, there'll be a differing clinic culture. When I clinicked in
Mm,
Switzerland, the way people in Switzerland and in Europe and in that part of the world are expecting clinics to unroll and unfurl throughout the day is very different to how I presented the clinic. They're expecting a certain format that they've been accustomed to. And when you go to certain parts of Canada, when I've gone to certain parts of Canada, they're expecting a certain format. But then in the next province, they'll expect a different format. And the same thing is true in the States also. Um, so I'm not sure actually what an Australian expectation for a clinic is. What I can do is speak upon what I will be delivering. The first thing I'll
mm,
speak on is the big pink elephant in the room, and that is that this is an expensive clinic to attend. I am really aware of that because it is ridiculously expensive for me to deliver this.
mm.
And I am, until recently, a one man band. A few years ago, I had €2 in my bank account, and that was it. Destitute, really, really destitute. And I'm not destitute now, but I'm certainly not a wealthy person. And so I remember doing clinic tours where I was traveling with, I think, COVID and delivering clinics with no voice. And to keep the costs down for everybody at the clinic, I had no rest days. I would do a 2 day clinic, get on a plane, 2 day clinic, get on a plane. I've slept in a car before clinics. I've slept on a couch. Um, I've slept on an inflatable mattress in a equine chiropractor's treatment room. I've slept in stables to deliver clinics. So I'm not flying high on the hog and going around the world having a caviar and champagne tour. This is not why they're expensive. They're expensive because it's expensive for me to deliver these clinics. And I have come up with a price point that my accountants and I say I can make ends meet with. So I have to say that because I want people to know that I really respect their hard earned money and their investment in attending. And it might be expensive, but I can promise it won't be a low value event. You need to buckle up if you're coming to this clinic. Come with not an open mind, with a clear head, because I'm about to fill it. I'm about to overfill it, and you'll go home choking on what's been filled. You might even have to step out of the room to take a breath for the information I will not stop imparting because we have no time to waste. And I want to make sure you get your money's worth. And there are ways we can get our value at a clinic that don't involve making horses sweat or making horses overcome things they shouldn't be overcoming. We can get value from a clinic that still centers and honors the horses always. So the clinic starts at about 9 o'clock, and I ask that we start on time because we start all together. And we start all together with a group self-awareness practice and a relaxation practice that I lead. Then we move into some groundwork, but there will be no rope swinging, flags flapping, or sticks tapping. It will be a low dust experience where I show you day one, step one, moment one, and then moment two, and then moment 3 of beginning to develop a language with horses that does not involve excessive pressure or impatience. So I start to take people through this. We do it all in a group. We have a maximum of 6 horses permitted at the clinic, but sometimes we have 4 horses at the clinic, sometimes 3. The less horses that are there, honestly, the easier my job is and the more detail I can give to each pair. I used to do up to 10 horses at a clinic, but now I've reduced it to maximum 6.
Mhm.
So all the horses are together on day 1 because horses need other horses, even if they don't know each other. And that's really, really interesting to watch them get to know each other. And we all work together. I go from couple to couple. Couple is a horse and a human. I go from couple to couple all day. I set the exercise and I describe the exercise. I describe why we're doing the exercise. I describe a lot of the science that underpins the exercise. And I describe what the exercise can give you in the future if you develop it long term. And then I'll go couple to couple, giving them detailed feedback and then stepping back, letting them implement that. We do that for 2 hours and then we break for 2 hours. We have a European style lunch break, which in North America is the hardest part of the clinic because they're used to throwing their food down their gullet in 20 minutes and going back to work. But I'm not interested in encouraging indigestion or colon cancer. So I really want people to chew their food slowly. But this is an important part of the clinic because rest is essential in our world. Rest is essential. Mostly it's essential for the horses at this clinic that they get 2 hours of processing time where they're not fussed with and they can really let down and relax in the space. So the horses are left alone for 2 hours and I try to remove myself from the clinic so that I'm not sucking all the air out of the room. And I really encourage anyone at the clinic to turn to the person to their left, turn to the person to their right and get to know each other, form community. Because this is not my performance. This is not about Lockie's here. It's about I'm here to help you guys kickstart a community or continue developing the community that's here. Because it doesn't matter really what happens at the clinic. It matters what happens after the clinic once I leave. That's really important to me. And I'm very proud to say that to this day, there have been certain communities that have taken that very seriously and have developed communities in the name of my work or around my work, but more importantly, around each other in various chapters that I visited around the world so far. So that's very important to me. Then we come back after the 2-hour break and we have at this time half an hour to 45 minutes of group exercises with all the participants and all the auditors without the horses. I call these exercises in empathy, where I really start to get you in your animal body and you can really start to feel for yourself some of the things that I'm teaching. So it makes sense empathically to you. If you know what it feels like, you can empathize with the horse. So we do that, and that can be hilarious. It can be confronting. It can be terrifying. It can be sad. It can be hopeful all at the same time, that session. Then in the rest of the day, which is about an hour and 15 minutes, is a session for riding or preparation for riding. Not all horses at the clinic are expected to be ridden and not all have to be ridden horses at all. But we do allow the horses on day 1 of the clinic to tell us if they are ready and if they want to and exactly what that looks like. So that's day 1. Oh no. And then after the riding, we sit down and have a Q&A. So I sit down like a mule, like an obstinate mule, and I don't move until there are no more questions. And sometimes that's 10 minutes. And sometimes that's been 2 or 3 hours. Day 2, we start with a shortened version of what we started day 1 with. So a group session where I take you through the flow that we established the day prior, but we have more flow to it now. So we sort of move through it and we take about half an hour to 40 minutes to do that. Then we have private lessons for the rest of the day. So we go couple to couple and it's 45 minutes to an hour private, depending upon how much the horse can actually tolerate and digest. Some horses have no attention span, some can go all day. But we have private lessons all day, plus a long lunch break in the middle, private lessons in the afternoon, Q&A in the afternoon. And altogether, I call that my introductory clinic. That's just an introduction. This year, I'm developing a second step from that, which is a fully immersive clinic, which is sort of building towards something we want to do in the future, which will be a 1 or 2 week long residency process, which I'm currently talking with a few close colleagues about. First of those, when they might be. They might be in 2026. Does that make sense? Has that all been coherent?
Yes,
Cool.
yes, it sounds amazing. It's one of the things I was super excited about when I read sort of the format that you sent through was the meditations in the
Mm,
beginning.
mm,
I yeah, it's so important. I think we underestimate how stressed we can get ourselves just, the idea of attending a clinic, let alone floating our horse, arriving. It's huge, it's massive. And a lot of the time, well, most of the clinics I've attended, it's straight in, and you don't have that time to regulate yourself, to get, clear and calm. And then we go out and work with our horses, and it generally all, you know, turns to, not the best time. So I think that's so important. And I'm so happy that that is the starting point. And I wish that every clinic started with meditation.
It's the starting point and the ending point. There are
Yeah.
different ways to regulate. One way to regulate is to just rip the band-aid off, jump straight in the deep end and get the feet going. That's one way to regulate. And there will be horse people out there for whom that is the preferable and better way for their nervous system to function. However, the industry has an abnormally large preponderance of that option available.
Mhm.
And so, what about the other option? And I'm just giving voice to that other option and letting people try that. And I think it's time that people who prefer having the band aid ripped off wore the other shoe for a bit and felt what it's like to slow down, pump the brakes, and actually
Mhm.
go into something smoothly without trying to burst the bubble.
Mhm.
And it's a big deal. So frequently at clinics, I've got horses who are coming to their first clinic. We've had colt starting happening at clinics with Mustangs, for example. We've had a couple of Mustangs at many Mustangs at clinics, but a couple in particular that had only had less than 3 months of handling on them. And they were coming to not only their first clinic, but 3 months of handling out of holding. And they're
Wow.
getting colt started at a clinic. And then there's a 27-year-old
Mm.
horse next door to them who's working on shoulder in, and we're balancing all of that at the same time,
Mhm.
you know? And so some horses come to clinics and they fly out the back of the trailer. We had one horse fly out the back of a trailer and run around the farm prior to the clinic because they were just in breakdown. And we've had some horses get off the clinic and get off the trailer and go, well, you know, blowing out their cigarette, going, another day, here we
Here
go,
we go
here
again.
we go again. And so for some horses, the goal is at the clinic, can they feel peaceful here? If they can be in that context and feel peaceful and like themselves, stick a fork in us. We're done. That's
Mhm.
anything else that comes past that is an enormous bonus. And for some
Mhm.
horses, the
Yeah.
goal at the clinic is, can I work on this canter departure that just seems to be, you know, elusive to me?
Mhm.
So it's really going to depend. And I really hold space for all of those levels because I am not popular enough to fill clinics with like 70 people per level. I have to be able to expose all levels to each other, but that's also why we're doing private lessons as well now so that
Yeah.
people can
Yeah.
work more specifically. But it's really helpful for young horses or green horses or nervous horses to stand in the same space with an older or more confident
Mhm.
horse and vice
Mhm.
versa, and vice versa. I've seen horses show up at clinics that have never met each other and they get connected to each other at the clinic and they start behaving like a herd in front of our eyes. But the people are on the end of the lead rope and they're part of the herd too. And everyone's like, what is going on? You know? So I really want people to know that my first priority is that everyone, especially the horses, feel relaxed and like themselves in the
Mhm.
space. Having said that, there are certain things that I will not permit relaxation on, such as, but not limited to, being hard on the horse. If that's what causes you to feel relaxed, I won't permit that. Or rushing the horse, or calling your horse names, or behaving in an entitled manner towards the horse, or even towards me or to others. If that's causing you to be relaxed, well, that's at the expense of others. So that's not permitted. But so long as you're within yourself and you're respecting others, I want everyone to feel relaxed and safe in the space.
Mhm.
And I work very hard at that.
Awesome. Sounds amazing and sounds exactly what we need. So needed. And I'm glad you mentioned the community as well, and that community beyond the clinic, because that's what I'm really hopeful for as well, coming out of this. Just bringing like-minded people together, um, and yeah, being able to create a bit of a family feel and that connection that I think some people may be halfway there, but are maybe a little bit reluctant to step into it, or a little bit fearful to acknowledge their empathy towards their training. That's definitely something really big that I feel in our area at the moment. I think that a lot of people, even trainers in our area, have a really big, like are very empathetic in themselves, but it's what to do with that empathy that is the question at the moment.
Well, I was raised in Australia, in the suburbs of Melbourne, but I was raised in Australia, but I've lived my entire adult life in Europe. And Europe is my home. But I have a sense for rural Australia. I have a sense for the way Australians deal with their feelings. And it's often, and I'll say this respectfully as an Australian who's unpacked this in my adult life, I'll say that it's often in an unhealthy manner.
Mm.
So secretly, very squishy, very touchy-feely, very emotional, very tender-hearted. But on the surface, it's all barbed wire
Mm-hmm.
and it's all tough skin
Yeah.
because Australia is still a frontier, especially rural Australia. It's a tough climate that has shaped us. We are colonizers that colonized and settled the West. It's a very similar atmosphere to the American West and the Canadian prairie, which I've clinicked in both those environments. I've clinicked in the Canadian prairie up in Edmonton, just south of the end of the tree line, hearing wolves off in the distance. I've shown up in northeast Wyoming at a roping barn 2 weeks before the first snows fell. And I'm walking into a roping barn, and my host is a coal mining, Trump voting Republican, and her husband, who's a rodeo judge. And they treated me with more respect than I've ever been treated with in my life.
Mm.
And so I'm really not the kind of clinician that's showing up only in warm audiences that are already converted. I have a passion for showing up in maybe environments where they've not met someone like me before.
Yeah.
I have a passion for developing clinics with first-time clinic hosts that have never hosted a clinic before. I have a passion for that. And then when I do show up at a host who's been doing it for 20 years and has an established community, and I walk in, I'm like, this is so easy compared to everywhere else I've been. So that's nice too. But I really enjoy going to places where they've never had me before. They've never had a clinic like this before, if they've even had a clinic at all before. I want people to know that if you're putting on a tough front because your community in some ways tacitly or implicitly demands that of you, but when no one's looking, you're booping your horse's nose and talking in their ear and giving them scratches and deciding not to use that much pressure when your trainer's not looking or when your clients aren't expecting things of you. I want you to know that you can come to this clinic and take your bra off and let your hair down. You can come to this clinic and take the tape off your mouth and start to speak to all the things you've been holding back on and actually stand shoulder to shoulder with myself, who represents a team, and I represent a community that I'm growing around the world, that we've decided to specialize in this and develop
Mhm.
some of the most cutting edge approaches to working with minimum amount of pressure. And we're devoted to it. And we will give credence to it, credibility to it, science, passion, focus, discussion, and community to it. And I really want people to feel encouraged to come. And I know it's an expensive clinic and some people just can't afford it. And I, generally speaking, don't want that to be the reason why someone who really wants and deserves to be there can't be there. So, what I
Mhm.
will say is if you're one of those people, get in touch with us, talk to us, and say, I'm passionate. I really, really can't. Because remember, 5 years ago, I had €2 in my bank account. And 5 years ago, I would have loved to have been at a clinic like this, and I just couldn't.
Mhm.
So I remember when people extended kindnesses to me, and I'm not averse to extending kindnesses to others in that capacity also, if I'm able to,
Mhm.
between you and me, Elise, and people listening. I mean, it's no secret now because I'm speaking to it, but I am working as hard as I can on a scholarship fund within my business and at my own discretion. And without publicly announcing it, every year I offer scholarships to clinics, to my programs, to my courses. Every year I do that. I just don't talk about it publicly because I'm not interested in wearing a hero cape or telling people, oh, look at me, I gave a scholarship. It's not about that. I do it when people get in touch and we get to know each other, and I feel like they're going to deserve this and not create entitlement around it and not abuse the privilege. So that's really, really important to me because this is not,
Mhm.
it's a business and it is a for profit enterprise, but I'm not here to be greedy. And there are more important things than money, such as the community we leave behind once this clinic is over.
Mhm. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. And it's so nice to hear that as well. I think a lot of people will feel a lot better hearing those words. I know I do. I mean, personally, I was that person you spoke of for a long time who quietly in secret would use less pressure and do things in a way that felt more comfortable to me because I was afraid of my trainer or the other people around me. And it's only been probably the last 3 or so years that I've really come out of that and started to just do things in a way that feels safe and comfortable for me and for my horse. Um, so yeah, I really do appreciate you saying that and encouraging people who may be in that same situation, looking for an invitation or a way out of that, that this is perfect for them. And that's really what I'd love to create out of this whole experience, is being that sort of safe space for people to come into.
And there's a whole variety of people that come to these clinics. I thought when I'd be doing these clinics that I'd be attracting sort of one type of horse person. I'm getting a huge spectrum.
Mhm.
I'm still confused why I have that kind of appeal across the spectrum. But my only prerequisite is that people care very deeply about their horses. That's my only prerequisite.
Mhm.
If you don't care deeply about your horses, do not come to my clinic. Really don't. That's the only time where I say, please stay at home if you really don't care about the horses. But if you care about the horses deeply, not a little bit, not a lot, deeply, if you
Mhm.
wake up in the morning and they're the first thing on your mind and the last thing on your mind when you go to bed, and if between you and yourself, you kind of prioritize the horses sometimes over your family or your work, then this is the right place for you. And it turns out
Yeah.
people of all disciplines of riding care deeply about their horses. I've had people show up at a clinic and ride in a spade bit with big rowed spurs. And I had to pause and go, huh, what is it exactly they like about my work? But then I went, no, 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 no. They're here and they care deeply and
Yeah,
I will
and
work
that's
with
what
them.
matters.
and I will
Mhm.
work with you and we will talk about these spurs. Now, I don't allow spurs in my clinic anymore, but at the time when that happened, I hadn't anticipated it and I worked with that person. And
Mhm.
I'll say this, they made it be known that they were a skeptic of my work. And they started the clinic as a skeptic and they ended as a skeptic, just less percentage of a skeptic. You
Mhm.
see? And maybe they took home maybe a tool here or there, or maybe they softened an edge there, or maybe they've got some room to think on this, but they weren't fully converted and going to go run away with the
Mhm.
circus, but they came and gave me a go. And they're
Mhm.
welcome at this clinic also. I've had people show up at a clinic who are facilitators and trainers themselves, and that I can see, and they signpost for me that they're struggling to settle into the student role. And I'll give feedback, and maybe even I've had people speak over me as I'm giving feedback and say, "Oh, well, but and explain what they're doing." And that's welcome also. I'll work with that. I've had people show up with 29-year-old minis who sat down, took command of the space, and took a nap in the middle of the clinic with all the big
Mhm.
horses working around them because that person had fear of horses and so was working with a mini. So there's a big spectrum welcome.
Mhm.
We have a priority boarding pass to people whom, like you say, are really into exploring this sort of stuff and how they feel around their horses and want a little bit less of trying to figure it out on their own and a little bit more of structured learning
Mhm.
techniques that have been developed by professionals and refined by community that can kind of bring them further ahead in their work, right? Rather than just trying to figure it out when no one's watching, you can actually
Mhm.
fit into a
Yeah.
system that allows you to be yourself as well. So
Mhm.
that's priority boarding pass, but anyone who cares deeply is welcome.
Mhm. Mhm. No, that's great. And I've extended this um, invitation for the clinic out to so many people, even because I'm a vet nurse. I'm like, vets, barriers, everyone. This stuff is so relevant. It's not just about, if you own and ride horses, it's just working with them in general, and having that whole horse approach to um, everything. Yeah, I think it's really important to look at it in a broader sense as well, that it's not just for people who, yeah, are riding. It's really important, this stuff that you're teaching, to get out to anyone who interacts with horses on any level,
If they care deeply,
if
that's
they care
again
deeply.
that's my only prerequisite. Just me personally, I can't work with people who don't care deeply or
Mm-hmm.
who wantonly engage in practices they know are harming horses and don't care. That I can't walk into. I do have colleagues that have a nervous system and a soft skill set where they can walk into those environments and bring those people to a place. I'm not that trainer. I wish I were. I'm just not good enough at that. So that is my prerequisite. But yes, in a broad sense, everyone is welcome within
Mm-hmm.
those boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Um, the other thing I wanted to touch on quickly is the pre-clinic course. Um, and if you can let us know who that is available to. Um, I've been working my way through it and I keep revisiting it because every time I watch the videos, there's something else that comes up that yeah, didn't kind of sink in before. So that's been really cool. The one thing that I really loved is the resensitization technique. I've been using that quite a bit on my mare leading up to the clinic, and I love it. It's been amazing. I feel like I know it's only one part of it, but it's been such a missing piece for us. So thank you so much for yeah, allowing that pre-clinic course. It's been awesome and really good value for me personally.
Thank you. So I have several online courses available at this time. There's the foundation online course. I have an intermediate groundwork course. I have a course on writing, but there's details around exactly how I conceptualize that. But anyway, I have a recording of a full clinic that I did in Colorado available as a course. And when I record future clinics, they'll be added to that same course. So it's like a location where I put clinic recordings. I have a hoof care course. I have a human movement course for equestrians. And I have a food reward course for people who are skeptical of food rewards. So I've got a bunch of courses out there. But what was necessary was a specific course designed for anyone attending a clinic that wanted preparatory materials and to understand what they were walking into. Because the first clinic tour I did, um, I put a few, I sent people a few links in like a PDF, but it was insufficient to prepare them properly for what they walked into. And what I found was sometimes the participants, the first 2 hour session, they were just landing at the clinic going, hang on a minute, where am I? What it's like this? Oh my God, wait, what? That's not what I expected. And so I wanted to stop all of that because I want us to get the most out of our time together. And I want that the participants in particular are walking into something where they are prepared as we can be so that we can get the most out of it as possible. So it's a specific course designed for people attending clinics where I describe everything from how the clinic will work to why we're working it that way, to community boundaries that I set at the clinics and why we have those boundaries. That's often the hardest part for people to listen to is have me sit there and describe boundaries for the community at the clinic. But I have to. Uh, I describe the code of conduct at the clinic. I describe the desired atmosphere at the clinic. And then I describe, I think, 2 or 3 basic tools that I will teach at the clinic. But they're just 2 or 3 of the tools we'll be teaching at the clinic, but they're very important ones. And just to give you a taste of what we're going to explore so that when we get there, you've got some competency with something so we can start to explore other tools. And also, I pop in there some recordings from clinics, varied examples, so you can see what a clinic looked like at once upon a time in this place, etc. So I continually add to that course, and in the future, I'll pull videos out, redo those videos if the clinic structure has evolved or if I've changed an element or a vibe of the clinic. So it's a dynamic course, but you have lifetime access to it. And I offer that course included in the participants ticket. So if you come with your horse to participate in the clinic, that pre-clinic course is included without any additional charge, and you have access to that for life. And then we have an auditor ticket. We've called it premium auditor, but that sounds so corporate and gross. So we're renaming it like auditor plus because you get an addition. So there's a basic auditor where you just come and watch. And then there's an auditor who comes to watch and gets the pre-clinic course. And that's an additional cost for those people. It's for people who are nosy and curious and want to deep dive. And so that's the ticket I would buy to any clinic. I would buy that one. And in some locations, if we've sold out of those auditor tickets, I buy all of them lunch. If we sold out of those tickets, I bought them lunch, but that's not guaranteed. And in some locations, there are places to sit to watch the clinic that are better than other places to sit. So we give you that sitting spot, like next to the speaker or next to the heater or whatever it is. So we try to make sure we give you benefits that are relative to the expense if we can. But you definitely get that pre-clinic course. The participants are also entitled to post-clinic coaching with me. That's valid for 3 months after the clinic, and that's included in the cost. It's all subject to availability, of course, because if I'm working like the clappers and there's no spots available, then it's not available. But we do stipulate that it is available, subject to availability. But I like to have that for people who want to follow up after the clinic as well.
Right. I also had a question from a couple people recently that are really wanting to attend, and I know it's ideal to attend both days as an auditor, and also just auditor means spectator. I've had lots of people ask me what an auditor is. So
Yes.
in Australia, spectator or fence sitter, that's what we're talking about.
Right.
Um, so the question was which day would be best to attend as a auditor or spectator if only one is available to them.
If only one is available to you, I would recommend the first day.
Mm-hmm.
That's also a little bit like saying, what's the best thing to have for dinner?
Yeah.
Well, that depends upon your tastes, right? So the participants, I used to even allow participants to choose which day they come so that people could come only on one day or only on the second. But that turned out to be disruptive to actually presenting the horsemanship properly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's now policy that participants sign up for the whole thing. And in the future, maybe we do that with the auditors as well.
Mm-hmm.
But at this time, I want that auditors have the option to
Yeah.
tend to their budget properly and be able to experience as much of the clinic as they're able to. What frequently happens, Elise, is people can't afford day two or think that day two is not important or one day will be enough. Frequently, at the end of day one, I'm standing there with a line of people saying, I want to come tomorrow. Can I come tomorrow?
Yeah.
And I have my administrator on standby to make sure that they can process that so they can come
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow. And that's very tricky from an administration standpoint because we try to close signups for the clinics 48 hours prior to day one, just from an administrative standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
We don't allow signups on the day. We don't allow cash in hand. We don't allow people just to rock up and attend. It's not a casual event. I have traveled from Spain to get here. This is not a casual event for me. I have been planning this 18 months out, be organized and be ready to attend. And I do lose income by closing 48 hours prior. Like, oh, I thought I'd just sign up the night before. So we don't do it that way. No judgment to people who do. It's just we can't facilitate it that way because everything that goes into me being there is quite involved. But
Mm-hmm.
day one, if you can only afford one or only have time for one, day
Mm-hmm.
one is the best one to attend. But if you attend
Okay.
day one and you ask me nicely, can you come tomorrow? We can arrange that also.
Okay, great. Excellent. That answers that really well. Um, so I think we're pretty much out of time,
Well,
but
let's keep talking until my phone rings. I've got the people
okay,
coming at 1:30, but
okay,
they will call me when they're here. So let's keep going until they ring.
okay.
Okay.
All
If you've
right.
got more questions, I want to make time for that.
I think that was pretty much all of my questions. Um, I guess you've briefly touched on this anyway, but for those people who I've had so many people inquire, but they're very, very nervous about attending. And I think it goes back to um, just past experiences of clinics in our area. Not saying that they're all bad. We've had some fantastic clinicians here in the past, but also some not so nice, where people have felt, you know, that their horses or themselves are being bullied or manipulated in some way. And it's really sad. I'm saddened every time someone reaches out to me and says, look, I really want to come, but I have this, this fear and this past experience. And obviously that's not at all what this is about. And this is why I'm so passionate about bringing you here, because I know that that is not an environment that you're going to create for us. But what would you say to those people who are, umming and ahhing and have that bit of the background and who are worried about that judgment and have that fear?
I'm so glad you've asked that question. So, I have a reputation with my social media for being strident on several issues. And I have a reputation on social media for being unafraid to address problems as I see them. They are, that is an intentional strategy of mine personally and professionally to filter out the people I work with so that the people I work with are willing to address issues.
Mhm.
I also have a particular issue in working with unkind people. I can't work with them. And so when I'm on social media and I'm being strident and maybe even judgmental about stuff, what that's actually doing is filtering out unkind people, because the people who I actually work with are some of the kindest people I've ever met. And once they get inside of my walls that I put up, we all relax with each other because there's no fox in the hen house.
Mhm.
So my strategy online is to have that front so that the actual work, because social media talks about the work, it's not the actual work.
Mhm.
But the strategy for the work is that we can all be safe with each other, to really roll our sleeves up and be absolutely honest. Now, having said that, one of the things I do for all of the participants at all of the clinics is we send out a week prior to the clinic. When I say we, my administrator sends out a long intake form for all of the participants. And the participants are people coming with the horses. Yeah, that's just the language we use, because I don't
Mhm.
want to say rider, because I welcome
Mhm.
non-ridden horses and I don't
Mhm.
want to exclude them through language.
Mhm.
So we send out a long questionnaire. Some of the questions include, on a scale of 1 to 10, how comfortable do you feel getting direct verbal feedback in a clinic environment?
Mhm.
And the second question after that is, would you like me to develop a special signal between you and I, like a wink or a nose tap or a shoulder scratch, where that indicates that I give you feedback with the microphone turned off
Mhm.
so that you're more comfortable? Some people answer yes to that, and some people answer no to that, and I always honor it. I
Mhm.
ask them, one of the questions on the intake form is, have you ever been to a clinic and had an uncomfortable or traumatic experience?
Mhm.
And describe that for me. Now, I'm not a therapist, but I am trauma informed, meaning I want to be informed of the trauma, but I can't work on the trauma,
Mhm.
right? And I will not, at this clinic environment, trauma spotlight anyone or attempt to do horseman's therapy for people. Will not. Other clinicians do that. It's very dangerous. I do not
Mhm.
go into people's minds to rearrange the furniture. If someone says, I've got a trauma here, I go, thank you for informing me. I will keep that in mind. Let's focus on the horses and I'll signpost that for you to work on in appropriate environments. Yes, but
Mhm.
thank you for telling me. I'm glad its presence is known. But I want to know if they've had a bad experience at a clinic before.
Mhm.
I also want to know, I ask them, on a scale of 1 to 10, how prepared do you feel your horse is for the clinic? On a scale of 1 to 10, how prepared do you feel for the clinic? I ask, do you have any hopes, dreams, expectations for the clinic? Said, are you willing to receive feedback that is not in alignment with your expectations if I think that it's helpful for you? So
Mhm.
I gather all of this information. We also ask their name, their age, their background. We also ask for the horse's name, age, and background. I ask, what do you know about the horse's life from ages 0 to 2? If you know anything at all, what are the
Mhm.
horse's health issues? So I gather all this information. And then Catherine, my administrator, who has at this point saved me, I don't know, like 3 nervous breakdowns by doing all the admin for me, because she's amazing. She compiles these questionnaires into a PDF, like a dossier. We actually call it a dossier. And then she emails that to me when I'm traveling around the world doing clinics. And I sit in airports, I sit in hotels, I sit in my accommodation, and I study this document. I memorize names, ages, instances, backgrounds, so that when you, as a participant, meet me at the clinic, I don't say, hi, what's your name? I say
Mhm.
hello and call you by name and call your horse by name the first time you
Mhm.
meet me. That's very
Mhm.
important to me, that when you show up, I already know who you are based upon the information you've provided, and I will call you by your name, and I will call your horse by your name, and you're invited to get to know me by my first name. And that's very, very important to me. The morning of a clinic, you will find me getting up extra early, and I'm not a morning person, but I'll get up extra early. I'll stretch, and then I'll have my breakfast, and I take myself away from the host who maybe wants to chit chat, and I'll be sitting with my computer studying that dossier right up until when I walk into the clinic.
Mhm.
And so the level of care and attention I bring to that means a lot to me because I have been told stories, horror stories from clinics before. I have a long term client who is still with me. She's been with me a couple of years now, whom grew up in the American hunter jumper world.
Mhm.
And you once walked into a clinic with her mare and was shamed in front of everyone for the mud on her clinic, on her horse's pasterns because it was raining cats and dogs. And they refused to give her a covered shelter for her mare and sent her down the end of the farm for the clinic because her mare wasn't prestigious enough. And she walked into the clinic with mud on the pasterns and was shamed in front of everyone. And how dare you walk into the clinic and disrespect me with a dirty horse? And so her intake form said something to the fact of, is it okay if my horse is dirty? And I'm like, yes, babe. Like, show up dirty and we can take the saddle off and roll. You can be covered in mud. I don't mind at all. And please don't bring this season's matchy matchy set because maybe we need to put that on the floor, you know? Like, and she came to the clinic, and this was the first clinic she'd ever been to where her instructor had not sedated her horse without her consent. Intravenous. Every clinic she'd ever been to, and her horse was 18, her instructor, without her consent, took her mare and sedated that horse so the horse was manageable in the clinic setting. Every clinic she'd ever been to. So she walks in my clinic and she's just jangled nerves, and her mare's jangled nerves.
Mm.
And day one was really difficult because we were basically performing an exorcism on those memories for
Mm.
both of them
Mhm.
at the clinic. It was really difficult. And in
Mhm.
fact, the horse reached threshold within an hour and 15 minutes. And I said, that's plenty for her today.
Yeah.
I'm going to excuse her from the clinic without prejudice. I'm not banishing you. It's just your horse needs to take a minute, and
Mhm.
I'm going to have you over there. But she was so lucky that my friend and colleague was there at the clinic, had flown in from another state to support me. And I said to my friend and colleague, I said, I just looked at them and I said, you go be with them. So I had a
Mhm.
support network in place at that clinic so that if I couldn't be with that client had someone with them when they had to leave the
Mhm.
clinic. And that my colleague and friend stood with them in the
Mhm.
field for 2 hours and held their hand. And the next day at the clinic, they finished the clinic. They were the last rider standing at the clinic. They endured, not endured, but they had the most staying power out of anyone on day two. And the image in my mind is her trotting her mare unsedated on a loose rein around that beautiful arena. And all the other women who were participating in the clinic who had put their horses away were jogging alongside them in a group. I said, you're going to experience community that supports you now. And so is your
Mhm.
mare. So you're all
Mhm.
going to move together. And this is something that only women can do for you because it was women that harmed you. So
Mhm.
I'm facilitating, but as a dude, I need to shut the F up and step back and let you experience this. And that's how they finished their clinic. And,
Yeah.
people sniffling in the corner, emotional horsemanship, right? Because this is a big deal. Like the amount of abuse
Yeah.
that's in our industry is
Mhm.
egregious and
Mhm.
normal.
Mhm.
Normal. And they think if you're coming to a Lockie clinic and I'm going to be harsh, I'm harsh against abuse. Oh, you best believe. And I had an intern once that called me a steel marshmallow. I'm strong and soft because it actually requires a great deal of strength, more strength to be soft than it does to be brutal.
Mhm.
And there's a difference between strength and discernment and brutalism and judgment. There's a big difference. And I am definitely owning that I can be very strong and I can be very discerning, but I am not an abuser. I will stand up for myself against abusers, even if they're
Mhm.
clients. And I will stand up for the horses, and I will stand up for my colleagues, and I'll go to the mat for all of you because it's going to require nothing short of some form of steel marshmallow warrior to walk into this industry and create real reform, and not reform that turns horsemanship into a self-help modality, not a
Mhm.
reform that turns horsemanship into an altar to the human ego, not reform that gazes in the mirror and it talks about people and horses are a style prompt, because we've got that kind of reform in the industry already, and that's needed. But the reform I'm really focusing on is methods of training matter. Methods don't have to railroad horses. Methods should factor in the individuals, but still give structure for individuals to follow. And so that's really the reform I'm focused on. And doing that with gentle practices apparently is controversial. Isn't that wild that it's controversial to be gentle? Isn't that wild? And
Mm-hmm.
so that requires a certain inner strength from me in order to tackle that. But when it comes to the participants at the clinic, I will be studying you before you show up. I had someone at a clinic in Canada recently bring her neurodiverse son to the clinic. And in their intake forms, when I was studying them, actually, Catherine, my administrator, studied them first. My phone's not ringing, by the way, so we can keep going. Catherine studied the intake forms first and said, "Oh, Lockie, there's a couple of elements on this intake form that I want to bring to your attention before you would normally read this form." That's the level of care my team's bringing. She's pre-checking these forms and she knows when I typically begin reading them. She brought it to my attention in advance of my typical time scale because she thought it needed additional care. This is what we're doing behind the scenes. This is normal. And I pay her a salary for this. And so she brought it to my attention. She said, they're reporting that this horse is aggressive. And I first asked her, I said, well, just ask her if she consents to me calling her on the phone directly. Because God knows I hate it when people call me directly. I never answer if people call me directly. So I asked for consent. I'm a millennial that way. Text me, don't call me. And so I called her, said, hello, it's Lockie Phillips here. How are you? Oh my God. Oh my God. She's on the phone. I'm like, no. I just want to talk to you about your intake form. You report aggression. I just want to hear what that's about, because a horse who's actually aggressive, according to my definition of aggression, should not really be at this clinic,
Mm-hmm.
because that horse needs to have things in place in their home environment so they can be safely worked with. And I'm interested in the safety of everyone at the clinic. Defensive horses, yes. Defension's not a word. Defensive horses, yes, come to this clinic. Aggravated horses, yes, but aggressive is a horse that's going outside of themselves to attack. That shouldn't be present at the clinic.
Mm-hmm.
And what I heard them describe was a defensive horse. They said aggressive. I said, well, what you're saying is aggression. I'm saying is defensiveness. But do I have your consent that if this horse is actually aggressive, that I have to excuse you from the clinic
Mm-hmm.
without prejudice? And they said, yes, of course. They also
Mm-hmm.
reported certain issues with their neurodiverse son that I felt had the potential to be outside of the scope of my competency to support and facilitate at a clinic, because I'm not qualified to work with certain levels of humanity. And I wanted to check with them that as a mother, that what was exactly coming to the clinic and what I could expect, and
Mm-hmm.
the level of support that they wanted. And I just spoke with them as a mother about their son to make sure that their son was in the right place. And she was
Mm-hmm.
like, no, we're in the right place. He really wants to be there. And we had the most fabulous time with them, the most fabulous time. And his private lesson with his mare was so touching. Everyone was weeping to watch this 17-year-old young man's connection with this down and out mare. And he had never done shoulder in before. I was like, would you like to try shoulder in? He was like, yeah. I was like, well, do this, and then do this. And he went, okay. And we'd been building on those skills at the whole clinic, and they just did it. And there it was.
Wow.
And the way she was connecting with him, and this was the horse that they had labeled as aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't aggressive. She just took exception to his pressure sometimes and wasn't afraid to
Mm-hmm.
tell him.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what we're doing behind the scenes prior to people
Mm-hmm.
getting there. And I have a little booklet that I keep in my pocket at the clinic that has notes based upon that intake form that give me keywords to focus on in my mind as I'm teaching, on elements that I think might be important for this person to focus on. And sometimes those are difficult elements. Sometimes I need to deliver a message from their horse that the horse needs to be retired from riding.
Mhm.
And I'll take my time to deliver that message in a way they can receive it. And sometimes the message is the horse wants more from you. So we put a lot of care into it. And I so appreciate people
Mhm.
who are nervous, who are showing up. I
Mhm.
would be. I'd be shitting my pants to go to a clinic. I'd be shitting my pants, because I so enjoy just minding my own business
Yes,
and working
yeah.
with my horses at home. I so enjoy that to a
Mhm.
fault. But um, if I can encourage anyone who's nervous to join, I will. But I also
Mhm.
don't want anyone to be there who would experience themselves in a way that would break their mind into at the clinic.
Yeah.
If your nerves really would break you into, no matter how much support I offered, and sometimes the
Mhm.
level of support I offer makes it worse because they're like, he really, really cares, and I've got to live up to that. For some people, that makes it worse. That means we should be with a mental health care professional. We should be taking care of that, and that this
Mhm.
environment's not right for you in this moment. Come and watch, maybe. Or maybe send a friend to watch and hear about it afterwards. Or maybe sign up for my full clinic recording, and from the comfort of your
Mhm.
home, you can watch me
Mhm.
teach a clinic on a screen in a way that you can
Mhm.
control if you're interested in this work. And maybe next time I'm in Australia, you can come to that clinic instead.
Mhm.
So I often do at least 2 introductory clinics in one environment before we give anything deeper or longer.
Mhm.
So has that helped?
Yes,
Mm.
absolutely. Thank you. Um, yeah, I wasn't aware of the pre-form, which is
Well, you're not
awesome. I
aware of it
think
yet
that
because we haven't
I
sent it to
know,
you yet.
I know, but that's so great. That yeah is I think exactly what we need in that situation, just to help people feel more at ease about the whole thing. And it's so much more than just going to a clinic, isn't it? Like it's
Right.
it's everything.
Right.
Um,
It's an
so
expensive clinic, but it's a high value situation.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we're not
absolutely.
walking into this carelessly.
No,
This
yeah.
is not McDonald's. I'm not making another Big Mac, I'm not just putting something together, slap a package on it and move on to the next. Every clinic's different, and I'm approaching it
Hmm.
that way. When I'm doing
Hmm.
clinics, my schedule is cleared and I'm doing nothing else except fully focusing on doing
Hmm.
exactly that. It's a like monastic experience for me,
Hmm.
almost.
Awesome. Well, that sounds so good. I'm so excited. I'm still, as you're talking to me, I'm like, which horse do I attend with? I have 3 horses, and I'm trying to make the decision of who
Why not
is
all
going to
three?
attend.
Why not all three? Because I'm going to get there a couple of days prior. And, one of the things that's the privilege of the host is that I'll be spending time with you before, during, and after the clinic.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
the relationship I have with each host is really important to me.
Mhm.
And sometimes I go to a clinic and we discover, the host and I, that we're really not for each other. And that's okay
Mhm.
also. That's okay also. But often I find a host at a clinic and we discover, oh, we're really for each other. And then we start working together, long term.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that'll be part of your privilege, is that I'll be able to meet your horses before and we'll be able to visit on that. But you'd be welcome to
Mhm.
bring all three if you want.
Mhm.
You can do one session with one horse and then you can do a lesson with another, or you could choose one of them and take them through the whole experience. It is a tiring experience for them.
Mhm.
So maybe you'll choose one and that horse will tap out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if that's the case, I'll say, well, let's go find somebody else. You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
that's a
Mhm.
luxury and a privilege to have a few
Good
horses
to
to
know.
choose from.
I know, right? I'm
Mm.
very, very blessed. And they all bring something different for me as well. Um, but yeah, I may do that. Thank you. That's
Hmm.
so good to know. And I'm excited for them all to meet you. I feel like my mare in particular already sort of knows you because usually I'll listen to your podcast, or I'll listen to, the other day I was listening to your recording when you came back from being away.
The
Um,
digital diatribes. Yes.
yeah. Um, And she's sort of following me around the paddock, and she knows your voice. She doesn't tend to follow me around when I'm listening to anything else, but she's like, that one, yes. And she'll come and follow me around and listen in. So I feel like on some basis she already knows you a little bit. So I'm
Well,
really excited.
well, not all horses love me immediately. Some horses want to put me through a test. I've been at clinics where I'll start walking towards a horse to um, demonstrate or to indicate. And I'm always trying to take care of my energy when I'm in a clinic environment because there's lots of different energies flying around the room. Yes. And I've got to be a neutral presence if I can, or a supportive presence. But I've had some horses look at me and say, no, don't go, nope. Because they're humans in the middle of something with them and they don't want to be interrupted with it. And I go, whoop, okay, they don't want me there. Okay, good. I'll be over here. Can you hear me? Okay. Um, we've got a sound system, by the way. Is that right?
Yeah.
Good,
Yeah.
good. Sounds really important because I'm a chatterbox, so I talk all day. And if people can't hear me, then the value of the clinic is affected. But some horses will see me at a clinic and walk straight up to me and have something to tell me.
Yeah.
Make a beeline. And some horses at the clinic wait for me to come, and some say, don't come here because my person's going through something and that they don't need you physically here right now. Give us space, give me space.
Awesome. Well,
I think we
guess I'll
have it.
let them decide. Yeah,
Yes,
I think
I think
that's
we have it.
awesome. Thank you so much again for chatting with me. I think that's great and really good information in a different way. And yeah, I'll see you in 8 weeks.
I'll see you soon.
Crazy.
I hope that this interview, thank you for the interview, helps explain what we're doing, and helps people who are on the fence to get off the fence and pick a side.
Yes.
And the side
Yes.
might be definitely not, no thank you, hard left. And the other side might be, yes, I'm going to give this a try. So that's what I'm hoping this will do, is help people get off the fence. And that's why we don't call it fence sitting. We call it auditors, because you've decided to come watch. You see?
That's such a good point.
You have a great rest of the day. And
You
just like
too.
that, they're calling me now. So I'm going to go let them in.
Excellent. Perfect timing.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks,
Okay.
Lockie. See
My
you
pleasure.
soon.
Bye.
Bye.